that I will highlight towards the end of our topic, and this came out from our recent publication. I will take you slowly through the topic, and if you have any question, you can post it in the Q&A box for later. First, when we start with discussing this topic, of course, we would like to see the prevalences of obesity and other non-communicable diseases. Over the past 3 decades, the region has been subject to substantial changes in many elements like demographic, political, and economic, as well as social environment. All of these factors, of course, will affect and will cause some challenges that will be associated with diet, health, and nutrition. In this regard, many challenges will be associated in the Middle Eastern country with undergoing or under nutrition transmission, which will be coexist with non-communicable diseases. And also it will be associated with malnutrition. In this case, we are referring to both obesity and overweight. You can see from this slide that our MENA region has an over of 30 BMI obesity rate, and the prevalence is really high for women aged 18 years old and older. If we look at the average global consumption of sugar, global consumption of sugar and sweeteners, here I highlighted the MENA region. And as you know, consumption of added sugar is mostly linked to non-communicable diseases and a variety of non-communicable diseases, which include obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, decline in cognitive, as well as type of cancer. When it comes to the prevalences and rates of consumption for sugars, I can report here in 2015, the World Dental Federation, they have indicated that most countries in the MENA region consume sugar at 15% of total energy, approximately around 75 grams, as you can see here from this slide. Most of the MENA region countries, they consume over and around 75 grams of sugar per person per day. Also, WHO in the same time or same year has indicated that the calorie intake in the MENA region countries has escalated from 2,290 kilocalories per capita per day in the year of 1964 to year of 1966 has increases to 3,090 kilocalories per capita per day in the year of 2015. Also, WHO are estimating that this consumption rate will be increased in the year of 2030 to reach 3,170 per capita per year. So this will take us into our topic, which is the non-nutritive sweetener and how they linked to the consumption and intake of sugar. Scientific literature suggests that non-nutritive sweeteners approved by the United States Food and Drug Agency have been potential to limit the intake of sugar, as well as reducing the associated risk factor of disease. Currently, there are 6 approved non-nutritive sweeteners by those agencies as food additives. Namely, they are saccharin, aspartame, acesulfate, potassium, sucralose, neotame, and advantame, as well as stevia-STATE, stevioside and dropidioside, they are approved to be consumed as dietary supplement. Let me take you further to the differences between these non-nutritive sweeteners. As I mentioned, I will take you through aspartame, stevia, acetylsulfame, potassium, and sucralose. If we look at them, they differ in terms of their origin and also characteristic. 1 minute. I cannot move my cursor. Okay, so they differ in terms of their origin and characteristic. Some, but not all of the low-calorie sweetener currently approved by approved by the food authorities to be used by the food supplies as shown here. I mentioned earlier the United States Food and Drug Administration. And also, I would like to highlight that not only the US Food and Drug Administration who authorized such additives, but also the joint FAO-WHO Expert Committee on Food Additives, the Codex Alimentarius Commission also approved these food items, the European Food Safety Authority. All of them, they approve, and many other authorities that I will highlight later on, like Canada, Health, Australia, Food and Food Safety Authority. They all approve the use of low-calorie sweeteners for their specific region. As you can see from this slide, each sweetener is approved differently or produced differently using, some will be produced from amino acids, others will be produced by minerals, changing the structure of sucrose. Except for the stevia, where it will be extracted from plant minerals, plant materials. If we compare stevia, aspartame, sucralose, and acetylsulfame K to the regular sugar, we can see that they are much sweeter than the normal sugar, with a range between 200 to 600 times, with sucralose being the highest in its sweet. Sweeteners also should be chosen carefully by the food industry depending on their application. For example, stevia, those two, stevia and acetylsulfame potassium, they keep their sweet flavor at high temperature, while if we look at aspartame, it does not really keep the sweet taste because it loses the sweet taste at a higher temperature. Maybe Kim? For the
yes, Dr. Launching now.
You can answer, this is just a recall of your information, of the information that I just highlighted. You can answer this poll question, and let's see what will be the result. Non-nutritive sweetener that is heat stable and sweeter than sugar by more than 250 times. Is it aspartame, potassium, sucralose, or stevia?
All right, we'll be ending now the poll questions. I'll be releasing the result.
Actually, those who answered stevia, they are really correct. And you can close the pop-up poll question, and you can see behind it that stevia cause induced almost, or it's sweeter, more than 250 times than the regular sugar, as well as it's a heat stable additive. Non-nutritive sweetener also, they are the most extensively tested product for their impact on health by many regulatory bodies, such as in our previous slide, we mentioned the US Food and Drug Administration, the European Food Safety Authority, or we call it EFSA, Food Standards Australia, New Zealand, Health Canada, and the joint WHO-FAO Expert Committee in Food Additives. They have all consistently confirmed that all approved NNS are safe to be used on their acceptable daily intake. Here you see from this table, these are the acceptable daily intake by EFSA and by the US FDA, but also the other regulatory companies that or authorities that I have mentioned earlier, like New Zealand and Canada, they also have their own acceptable daily intake levels. When it comes to searching the literature for the best available evidence, the hierarchy of evidence, the one that you are seeing right now here, will be the core principle of evidence-based practice that normally rank the study type based on the strength and precision of their research method. This hierarchy of evidence is approved by the National Health and Medical Research Council, and most experts and researchers agree that the higher up the hierarchy, like randomized controlled trial, systematic review, and meta-analysis, will be the more rigorous the study in their methodology, and hence the minimized effect of bias on the result of the study. Therefore, when well-designed systematic review, meta-analysis, randomized control studies are always at the top of the pyramid. And studies that depend on the expert opinion or case report study, they are really can cause some bias in their result. Again, on the best available evidence, we need to take into consideration not only the hierarchy of evidence, but also the model of the study. So the design plus the model of the study. Are we doing cell culture study, animal model study, or human design study? As each model has a different role in the science. Maybe Kim? We have another poll question here regarding the different type of study. Which of the below is the study type that is used to understand the tissue distribution and toxicity of compound? Sorry. Okay, so some has chosen a cell culture model, others has chosen the animal model. Let me tell you the differences between the three models. The cell culture model, they normally assess things such as enzymes and transport system on the molecular level, while the animal, which is the right answer for this question, is used to understand the tissue distribution and toxicity of compound. For the human models, they are normally used for safety and activity of an ingredient, specific ingredient, either it comes from food or from medicine, to assess the relevant effect of that ingredient on a human parameters like blood pressure, blood in general, lipids profile, and other type of parameters. Now I will take you in the next few slides to different type of different model and different design of the study, and just to look at how they interpret the result in relation to our topic, which is the non-nutritive sweeteners. Let's look at the first slide, which is the cell culture slide. Here they talk about the metabolism of the non-nutritive sweeteners. Either they are absorbed like the here the acesulfame potassium and saccharin, or they are metabolized and excreted. Either they are metabolized and excreted but not being absorbed in the body, or even stored in the body. Let us look at this part of our slide where we here emphasize the steviol. So steviol glucoside, once we ingest steviol, we ingest it as steviol glucoside linkage, and they will not be digested in the upper gastrointestinal tract. However, they will be hydrolyzed only when they get into contact with the microbiota in our colon, and then the microbiota will cleave the glycosidic linkage and remove the sugar mutease, and leaving behind the steviol backbone. That steviol backbone will be absorbed systematically, and the released sugar will not be absorbed. However, it will be more likely to be utilized by the gut microbiota as an energy source. In this regard, steviol will make steviol as a 0-calorie sweetener. If we look at the sucralose here, it will not be absorbed by the small intestine. Rather, it will travel straight away through the intestine, unabsorbed, and it will be excreted in the feces. If we come to the aspartame, aspartame will not also be absorbed as a whole. Rather, it will be digested to either amino acid or methanol. These compounds, normally the amino acid and methanol, will be also the digestive end product of protein, fruits, and vegetables. So the amino acid will be utilized for protein synthesis, and the methanol will be mobilized in the liver. Another study from animal and cell model study. This study presents a misleading result. In this study, the author is saying that artificial sweeteners can still lead to obesity and diabetes. However, when we look into the details of this study, we can see that abstract was presented in a conference. Also, this study, there was no study result. However, the study was conducted in rat cell with low-calorie sweeteners. So how we can believe such result from a study that does not represent or present their outcome and detailed result? Another type of study is the observational studies. Here we can see that correlation not always equal to causation. So in this study, they correlated between Apple share price with the chemical engineering doctorates awarded. So they are saying that the more Apple stock price is higher, the more chemical engineers who get their PhD degree. This example, why I'm presenting this example, because it's similar to other epidemiological studies related to low calorie sweeteners, in which over the time, the studies shows that consuming low calorie sweeteners may lead to obesity, to increased prevalence of obesity. However, we cannot only depend on such correlation, because obesity is something, or a disease can be caused by several other factors. Maybe you can post now the third question, Kim. The question is saying, according to the hierarchy of evidence, systematic reviews and meta-analysis studies can introduce bias to the result, have rigorous methodology, expensive to be conducted. Yes, correct, have rigorous methodology. If we come to the expensive to be conducted, then we are talking here about the randomized control trial or the intervention trial, clinical trial. Introducing bias, like I mentioned before, expert report and case study report. Let's see this study. In this study, we are showing the reverse causality. This figure shows that the more, here we have the mean of waist circumference, and we have here the numbers or frequency of consumption of diet soda. In this figure, this study, if you look at it from the first look, you will translate this data by saying that, okay, people who has high waist circumference, they consume more diet soda. This will give a wrong interpretation to the current study. While the author, who is called Drunevsky in 2016, explained this figure very well by saying that those actually individuals who had a high waist circumference, they were following a diet. They were following a specific diet, and they were drinking soda because they want to facilitate their weight loss. So therefore, it is not the diet soda that is causing increase in waist circumference, but actually those with the larger waist circumference are on diet and therefore are drinking diet soda. This is what we call reverse causality. Another study, which is a long-term intervention study, the result from this study showed that in a control setting in which participants are consuming diet carbonated soft drinks, instead of full calorie carbonated soft drink, the participant actually lost weight. These results are what we normally expect if we consume diet soda. This will facilitate our weight loss. However, in reality, most of the consumers, they are not in a controlled or living in a controlled setting. They may consume diet carbonated soft drinks. However, they will decide that since they have saved calorie by drinking a 0-calorie soft drink, they are happy to eat a snack to compensate for the calorie they have saved. Therefore, instead of a net negative in the calories, they may be consuming the same amount of calorie from their diet as they had before consuming the diet soda. So we need always to look into the details of the studies. We need to check if these studies were pulled from observational or interventional study type. Another study of a clinical trial 1-year design study, which focused on weight loss. They have divided their participants into 2 groups. One group is a control group, which consumed 24 ounces of water daily for 1 year. And the other group were asked to consume the same amount, but from the low calorie sweetener beverages or diet sodas. So what you can see from this figure, that after 12 weeks of the intervention, you can see dramatic loss in the weight of those who were consuming low calorie sweetener beverages. And the group drinking such beverages also not only lost their weight, however, they maintained their loss for the rest of the study period. In addition, they reported that they have their hunger level was also reduced from consuming such beverages. This figure is pulled from a randomized control trial that shows the effect of different type of non-nutritive sweeteners on weight loss and also an eye-hand coordination. So from this study, you can see that each of the non-nutritive sweeteners has different effect on our body. We can see that sucralose here, or saccharin, has really impacted positively the weight loss, while other, they have added to the weight of the participant. However, we need to consider that this study is not a weight loss study. However, it's an eye-hand coordination study. Also, participants in this study were blinded, so they don't know exactly which type of sweeteners they are consuming. And also, there was no control group in this specific study. In general, when we look at the science and we try to identify the gap in our standing in relation to the NNS or non-nutritive sweeteners, we can identify that appetite, body weight, glycemic response or diabetes are often the area with the most debate, usually ties back to the type of study, either it's observational or randomized control study. Also, dental health is among those studies that has a lot of debate, knowing that sometimes meta-analysis where they used or they include observational studies can include and may have different conclusions. So still, we have some gap in terms of long studies to assess the effect of NNS on long-term body weight and also the effect of NNS on microbiota. So still, researchers should be encouraged to do research on these 2 areas. If we look at the study that were including stevia as one of their major ingredient to be tested, we can see here there is many studies on stevia in the science. However, most of these studies were done on to test the glycemic or appetite and satiety. When it comes to glycemia or the glycemic response or diabetes-related research, we find that these studies does not follow a consistent dosing for the stevia in regard to the food-like use. Also, the stevia that were used were of different formats. Some they will use concentrated or extract from plant material. Other they will use powder. So you can imagine how each of these types can introduce some differences in terms of the result. Also, there is, as you can see here, there is only one study in relation to the weight management and how stevia can affect weight management or weight loss, and few study in food intake. As I mentioned earlier, many authorities globally, they extensively test and approve the use of non-nutritive sweeteners as safe according to and based on their acceptable daily intake amount. Some of them are listed here, like the USDA, Mayo Clinic, World Health Organization, Food and Agriculture Organization / WHO Joint Committee, EFSA, FDA, American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. So all these authorities have reached a consensus that NNS are safe to be consumed and used by the food supply. Currently, regarding what I have presented earlier, still we lack some evidence regarding the question, do we still need to reduce the sweetness of our diet? And this is independent of reducing the sugar. As you know, as a human being, we're born to love the sweet taste. This is from our infancy and childhood. Some study in this area has shown that if a participant or individual were exposed to sweet taste from a diet source that are actually they are low in their amount of sugar, normally these individuals will decrease their consumption of free sugar, as well as they will be satisfied and they will have less desire to consume a sweetener from other sources. So in this type of study is encouraging the consumption of low diet or low sugary product. There are another study called CHOICE. Also, they have tested the consumption or intake of low-calorie beverages for a period of 6 months, and they saw that those individuals who consume low-calorie sweetener beverages had higher reduction in the dessert intake than those who were consuming water for the period of 6 months. What do we know about sweetness as a taste? Sweetness from long time, we can see from these two figures, they come from a longitudinal study. As you can see in the first figure, especially when the concentration of sugar increase, who really has a high level of preference? Normally, the children and adolescents. But those who are classified as young adult, this preference reduced when concentration increased. Also, if we look at the sensitivity to sweet taste by the adults in the year of 1973 and the year of 1982, it's almost similar. The sensitivity to the sweet taste did not differ for adults from one year to another. So again, we by nature and from infancy and childhood, we have high preference towards sweet taste. And also, studies has shown that sweet taste may vary by the genotype. So a person who is a European or Caucasian, his sweet taste will differ from an Asian individual. Also, this taste will, preference will decline by age. In 2015, and this is considered as recently, a study showed that there is no relationship between taste sensitivity and the weight of the body. Okay, now we reach the area where I will present our product or our review article. Why we have done this review article. Since non-nutritive sweeteners are being the most extensively tested by the global authorities, like what I have mentioned earlier several of times, still in our region, the healthcare professional, they have some concern. They have some concern regarding their usage or regarding their safety. So sometimes the healthcare professional does not know if the NNS sweet taste can induce a sweet taste craving, if they are suitable for patient like a diabetic patient, or if they can introduce risk for cancer development, if they are really can cause dental health issues, if they are safe for consumption by pregnant and lactating women, if they can cause some weight gain or obesity, if they have an impact on the glycemic response. Because of that, our main aim of the study that we conducted and we published, it's a review study, was an attempt to create an awareness in the MENA region regarding the non-nutritive sweeteners and specific concern regarding their usage. Just I need you to know that at that specific time when we conducted our research, there was no region-specific data available. Hence, our article were chosen to give a global perspective to the reader. And we need to transfer this recommendation and knowledge also to the healthcare professionals. The team who contributed to this review article, where Professor Nahla was included, Ms. Farah, Dr. Leila, Dr. Khalid Al-Madani, Professor Majdi, and Professor Shaukat. We, before publishing, we had to sit down in a round table meeting several of times just to pull out the needed literature review to be included in our review. Let me go through how we have managed to do so. First of all, we used the electronic search and we used the PubMed platform to conduct our electronic search with specifying our term, the wording that we need to put in our search. So we put low-calorie sweetener, wording like non-nutritive sweetener, non-calorie sweetener, artificial sweeteners, and high-intensity sweeteners. After putting all these words, we come up with a total of 496 publications. Out of these 496, we found 210 human studies, 40 clinical trials, and also 53 review and systematic review. We did not depend only on those on the electronic search. However, we took all of these 496 publications and we did manual screening for their papillography to check if there is any relevant review team that highlight they be literature non-nutritive sweeteners and risk of cancer. Also, we conclude from our study that NNS may be effective for lowering glycemic response, for sugar, for reducing energy intake, and they do not increase the sugar craving. In all means, and specifically for the MENA region, for the Middle Eastern and North Africa region, we can see that NNS can be used as a mean to tackle many issues. One of them is obesity, cardiovascular diseases, non-communicable diseases, and the high prevalence in the intake or high intake of sugar. So it can be used as I mentioned earlier, as sugar replacement to fight the obesity prevalences and non-communicable diseases prevalences in the region. Also, in our review, we set some recommendation. I will highlight here only a few of them, that specifically for our region, we require region-specific studies is needed to correlate between the non-nutritive sweeteners and their association with obesity, cardiovascular disease, non-communicable diseases, cancer, and we don't need only those research that correlate between the disease and the ingredient itself, but we need to reach a way of recommendation, practical recommendation, especially for the healthcare professionals. Also, we need some kind of recommendation for the industry so that it will help them when they formulate their products, and they need to follow the guidelines on their packaging by declaring any chemical composition of the NNS. Again, we need to do and to develop education, community education and awareness program to disseminate the potential role of NNS in reducing the sugar intake and being as a replacement or an alternative for sugar consumption. When it comes to healthcare professionals, they need to understand the safety profile for their individuals before giving and communicating any recommendation in regards to the non-nutritive sweeteners. At the end, what's the next step? The next step, we need to create somehow a campaign for awareness in the GCC countries, especially targeting consumer, to follow healthy choices by consuming low-calorie or lower sugary product as a mean of replacing sugar intake. This, unfortunately, cannot happen without a multi-stakeholder collaboration, which can include Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, endocrinologists, healthcare professionals, and even the social media. Also, we need that industry play a bigger role in reformulating their product and to have reformulation initiatives, not to reformulate the whole set of their product, but to take it into step so that they can provide healthier option to the consumer. If we have such awareness program, we need some facility so that the individual can follow this kind of program. I think, Kim, you can put the question now. So the question here is regarding the characteristic of, or if the non-nutritive sweetener can be considered as safe for consumption, lowering glycemia response, facilitate weight loss, or all the above. I assure you that by the end of this, actually we reach the end of this lecture, you will not forget the NNS at all. Because some of these, I mentioned a couple of times, some of this information again and again. Yes, luckily we have 19% of our participants who answered correctly. They are safe, we said, for consumption, they lower glycemia response, and also they facilitate weight loss. Also, you can, I think, present the next one. Diabetic individual should not consume food that contain NNS. Is that true or false? Can you present the answer, please, Kim? Yes, it is false. Diabetic individual should not consume, should be able to consume food that contain non-nutritive sweetener. As we said, it can, from the studies that I presented, it shows that consumption of NNS, either as a beverages or as additives to the food, can lower the glycemic response. The last message from today I would like to highlight in regard to low-calorie sweeteners. We mentioned 6. We went through many research. Some of them, they highlight positive and real outcomes. Other, we should not trust, as we need to dig out in the details of the methodology and the type and design of the study. At the end, non-nutritive sweeteners can give a sweet taste for the food more than the regular sugar, and they can be a mean for reducing the caloric intake. Also, as I mentioned in one of my slides for the stevia, although stevia can give us more than 250 sweet taste than the regular sugar, but still it provides only 0 kilocalorie. So we can use them to reduce the caloric sugar intake. They are safe, as mentioned. They are the most extensively tested ingredient by the different food authority for their consumption, because they don't want to approve an additive or an ingredient that will affect the health of the individuals. Again, they are safe if we consume them based on their acceptable dietary intake. Also, non-nutritive sweetener, they are an effective tool to control calorie intake, glycemic response, and glucose level. Therefore, they can help us in controlling the diabetes. Especially, it can be prescribed for diabetic patients, and also they can facilitate the weight loss. not only facilitating the weight loss, but as mentioned by a long-term study that I have presented earlier, those who lose their weight, they can maintain their weight even after 1 year of their consumption. Also, for dental caries, we need, along with consuming the non-nutritive sweeteners, we need to follow a healthy dental hygiene, which will reduce the risk of dental caries. This is the end slide of my lecture, and I hope that you have enjoyed the information regarding the reducing of sugar intake by the use of non-nutritive sweeteners. You remember the slide where I said we need awareness program for the GCC countries. I mentioned something about the collaborators. So what do you think? Multi-stakeholder collaboration is needed for developing awareness program among consumers. Is this true? Is it needed or it's not needed?
First is from Mr. Maher Sulaiman. What is the minimum age to use NNS in pediatric age group?
The minimum age, actually, all the, NNS can be introduced to formulas. So it can be used by those who are ingesting or consuming any of the formula. However, I did not come across any research that indicated when we can introduce the non-nutritive sweetener to children. It is used by the food industry in many of children product.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. The next question from Ms. Dana Aljundi. There is a study that says that consuming NNS will still let the body consume the calories you saved. Therefore, why to use NNS if end of the day you'll consume the same total calories?
In one of my slides, especially in terms of the long-term study, I have mentioned that most of these studies are conducted in a controlled environment. So we know exactly, we follow those individuals for their consumption. We regulate what they can eat, what they cannot eat. However, in the real life, sometimes even us, me, you, and the others, once we consume a diet beverage or a low-calorie product, let's say cheeses or low-fat milk, we end up saying, okay, I saved from here, then let me snack from, I'm allowed to snack other diet. So it depends on the behavior of the individual rather than on the effect of the NNS. NNS has approved to affect and to facilitate weight loss, but however, if I'm using NNS, any of those products, and at the same time I'm free to consume other food items, then I cannot reach my goal. So it's a really healthy lifestyle change.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. One more question from Ms. Dana. Which NNS among the whole list do you recommend? Stevia has high reputation.
Yes, stevia has a high reputation. Is it I'm recommending for the use of individual, or I'm recommending for the use by food product? I have presented all of them. It depends on the individual preference. Do they prefer higher sweet taste? If they prefer higher sweet taste and 0 kilocalorie, then they need to go with the stevia. If they really and if they really care about the taste and they don't really mind the kilocalorie, then they can choose sucralose, which is up to 600 times sweeter than even stevia and the regular sugar. So it depends on the preference. If we are going to recommend this for the industry, then we need to look into the structure and characteristic of each type of them, so that we ensure that the taste will not be affected during the processing procedures and at a high temperature.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. A question from Ms. Archana. Is there a controversy of renal patients in consuming NNS?
Is there what?
Is there a controversy for renal patients in consuming NNS?
I think since diabetic patient, obese patient, and many studies showed that some of the meta-analysis study that we came across, they indicated that all different individuals from the population, they can consume non-nutritive sweeteners. There is no risk as long as they keep in their mind to follow the recommended acceptance daily intake.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. One more question from Ms. Wanisha. Can NNS be used regularly in our meal preparation? And which of the mentioned NNS is best used for patients and just people trying to reduce the sugar intake?
Yes, the United States Food and Drug Administration, plus European Food Safety Authority and many other regulatory bodies, they have approved the use of these non-nutritive sweetener for the lifetime, because, as I mentioned earlier, they have really tested them extensively in regard their effect to the health. So they have approved 6, and other authority has approved other types of non-sweetener, non-nutritive sweeteners. So you need to look at your region. What are the list of the approved NNS and what are the daily intake value? Again, she mentioned something. Which one will be recommended to be used where? Can you read the question again, please, Kim?
Which of the mentioned NNS is best used for patients and just people trying to reduce the sugar intake?
No, I think the first one, she asked about which one can be used in the cooking.
In our regular meal preparation.
Yes. In our regular meals preparation, I would recommend stevia and acesulfame potassium because they can stand high temperature and they can be used for processing and for processing and baking even.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. We still have a lot of questions, but I will address one of them. We're sorry if we take most of your time. I know you're a very busy person. All attendees, if you have further clarifications or questions, you can direct it to us, to the KIF, and we can share it to Dr. Aisha for further answers. The last question we will address for now, Dr. Aisha, is from Mr. Raed. What is the safe dosage of NNS?
Again, I will present the slide that I have presented earlier. It does show all the accepted daily intake, and this is the accepted daily intake for the 6 approved NNS. But again, this is related to the US Food and Drug Administration and for European Food Safety Authority. If Raed is from our region, then he can follow either of these acceptable daily intake values or amount, or he can look at the WHO-FAO Joint Committee expert on food additives. They have also mentioned their the acceptable daily intake amount that we can use for a lifetime, ingested over a lifetime, without anchoring any risk factor.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha, for your time and for a very wonderful presentation for today. I think all the attendees have enjoyed your lecture and we get the information we needed to receive. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any further information to share?
Thank you so much, Kim, for the invitation. I thank again PepsiCo for sponsoring this online seminar webinar. Thank you. I thank also all the participants who has attended. We have over 200, mashallah, and I'm very happy to receive such question and to interact with the participant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Professor Aisha. We actually have almost 300 attendees to attend today, and it was really a successful one and enjoyable webinar with you, with PepsiCo. Once again, PepsiCo, thank you so much for joining us, for sponsoring this event. By the way, attendees, this is not just our first event with PepsiCo. This is a webinar series that we are having with them. We will always keep you updated with our next activities and next future webinar that we will be holding. And we hope everyone will be able to attend. And once again, Dr. Aisha, thank you so much, and we will be in touch with you soon.
Okay, Kim, can you mention about the CME, because many of the healthcare professionals and attendees would like to learn about this.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. Yes, once again, attendees, you will be receiving an email from us with the process of how you will acquire your CME certificate. Our activity for today is accredited by Department of Health with 1.5 CME hours. We will be sending 2 links in our email. One is for the post-test, and the other one is for the evaluation of the course itself. Don't worry, these links or these questions will not justify, or it will not affect the CME hours that you will be receiving. It's only an evaluation of the course itself. Once you have finalized all those 2 links, all those 2 questions, we will be sending you the PDF copy in email, your certificate, as well as to you, Dr. Aisha. We will be sending it in your email.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much, everyone, and we can now end the call. We hope to see you in our future activities. Thank you, Dr. Aisha. Stay safe.
All the best. Bye-bye.